much money does it cost to self-publish a book on Amazon? Or specifically, how much money did I spend to self-publish this book, Sparks in Iceland, which is a closed-door romance, which comes out next week. In this video, we're doing a full expense breakdown where I talk about the cost for the cover, the formatting, the marketing, and of course, the editing. So if you want to know exactly what I spent to create this book, make sure to stay tuned. Hello everyone, my name is Mandy. I'm an author, the creator of the Book Launch Planner series, and I also have courses on book cover design and book formatting. I make weekly videos on the business of being an author, so if that sounds good to you, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification icon so you never miss a new upload. You can also join as a YouTube member to get early access to videos as well as behind the scenes content. So Sparks in Iceland comes out next week, or maybe by the time you see this video, it's already out. So if you like closed-door romance where you travel to dreamy destinations like Iceland, make sure to check this book out. Now, the big marketing push I did for this book was to run a Kickstarter for this book. And the Kickstarter involved doing special and deluxe editions of the book, and that was a cost within itself. And I did a separate video breaking down the cost just for the Kickstarter, but I did not break down the costs for producing the regular edition of the book, which is now releasing. So if you want to know how much it costs to create and run the Kickstarter, I will have a separate video on that. You can watch it. It'll be linked in the description of this video. Today we're just talking about creating the book. So things like cover design, formatting, regular marketing, and editing. I've also done self-publishing cost videos for all the novels that I've written and published. So if you want to know how much I've spent on my other books and kind of compare and contrast, I will have a full playlist on my self-publishing costs, and that will also be linked down below. Let's first talk about publishing fees. This book is published on Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, which means it was actually free to publish. There wasn't any sort of fees. Now, if you watched my Kickstarter video, you know that I had to print my book through Kickstarter on Book Vault and also Ingram Spark, which does have publishing fees, and those fees were taken into account for the Kickstarter video, but for the sake of just talking about publishing the regular book, I didn't have to pay any publishing fees. Moving on, let's talk about proof copies. So typically you order proof copies to make sure that the book looks good and that everything looks okay in terms of formatting. This is actually a proof copy I ordered through Ingram Spark. It's actually one of the special editions that I got for the Kickstarter. So in that case, I didn't order any other proof copies like the proof copy through Amazon. I didn't end up ordering one, and that is because I've just published so many books and I've formatted so many books and I've designed so many book covers that at this point I don't really feel the need to check things in person all the time. And because I had done all those other checks elsewhere, I didn't actually order any proof copies for my book through Amazon. I just am trusting that I did everything correctly, and I'm very confident that I did. So I actually didn't spend anything on proof copies for my Amazon edition of the book. Now, what we do need to talk about is hiring an editor, specifically my copy editor. So I don't hire anyone for developmental edits because I work with beta readers for that step of the process, but I do hire someone for copy edits because I am just not confident in my own ability for copy editing, and so that tends to be the thing I spend the most money on. And in this case, I spent $1,500 on my copy editor, and I found them through Upwork, and I've worked with them in the past, and I will probably work with them again in the future. The next step in the editing process was proofreading, and I did end up hiring someone for the proofreading process. Now, oftentimes when I hire someone for copy editing, I will skip hiring a proofreader and instead will just have a bunch of other people proofread my book for me. But this is the first book I've published since becoming a mom, and since becoming a mom, the mom brain has been real, and some of the typos that I caught in my manuscript early on were extremely embarrassing. So I wasn't confident that we got them all during the copy editing phase, and I felt more comfortable also hiring someone for proofreading, as well as still having having a bunch of other people proofread the book for me. So I ended up spending $700 on proofreading. And the way I found my proofreader was I actually asked my copy editor if there was someone that they would recommend. And I will say I don't recommend that if you hire someone for copy editing to also have them do proofreading. You need a different set of eyes. So I had my copy editor recommend someone else to do the proofreading who they like and have worked with and found does a good job. The next thing I had to spend money on was cover illustrations. So obviously we have an illustrated book cover here, and I spent $250 on this illustration, and this is actually the same illustrator who did the covers for my road trip snapshot series. And he does a great job, which is a lot to say because he actually specializes in horror. So if you're someone who's looking for an illustrator for a horror novel or just horror type images in the first place, make sure to check out Warren Muzak. I will leave his info linked down below, but he is kind enough to work with me time and time again to create beautiful illustrations for my book covers, and I just can't recommend him enough. Now with that said, he only does the illustrations, and he actually does a full wrap illustration. So like when he gives me the illustration, it looks a little something like this, so I can add in the text later. So when it comes to cover design, I actually do all the typography for the cover design myself. And sometimes I also tend to tweak the illustrations a little bit as well. Now, if you're interested in doing a little bit of DIY book cover design yourself, make sure to check out my courses. I actually have 3 different courses on book cover design. The first course is just to teach you how to use Photoshop, and Photoshop in a way that'll leave you knowing how to create marketing materials for yourself. The second course teaches you how to take illustrations and add typography to them to create a book cover wrap or book cover jacket, much like I did with my book here. Whereas the third course that I have actually teaches you how to create a book cover from scratch using stock photos. The 3 courses build on themselves, so if you're someone who has 0 Photoshop experience and wants to learn how to create book covers out of stock photos, make sure to take all 3 courses. They come as a course bundle, or you can purchase them individually. They will be linked down below. If you want to see the full design process for this book, Sparks in Iceland, I actually have a time-lapse video of me adding in the typography for this cover. That too will be linked down below. Next thing we need to talk about is book formatting. So obviously I'm holding up the special edition, so there's sprayed edges here. But the regular paperback will look the same, where it has like a little bit of a fancier chapter header for each chapter. I do all the book formatting myself. If you don't know how to format your book yourself, you're gonna need to hire someone, but because I do it myself, I didn't have to spend any money, which is awesome. And if you wanna learn how to format your book yourself as well, I again have another course on that. I teach you how to format your book in Adobe InDesign, and you will know how to do formatting for your paperback as well as your ebook. Now let's chat about marketing. I didn't do a whole lot of marketing besides the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter was definitely the biggest marketing push for this book, but there were a few other little things that I did outside of that, and one of them was a cover reveal blast. So a cover reveal blast is essentially that you hire someone, or you can arrange it yourself, but I didn't. I hired someone who works with a bunch of other Instagrammers, so a bunch of people on Instagram post about your book on the same day, and in my case it was on the day I revealed the cover for Sparks in Iceland, and a bunch of people shared the cover on their Instagram. I paid $65 for that cover reveal blast. Was it worth it? Truly, I don't know. I think it's more of a vanity thing at this point because I just like seeing my book cover shared in a lot of different places on the cover revealed. I don't know if it actually converts to sales though, so I don't know if I'll continue to keep doing them in the future. The next thing I did for marketing was to have my book on NetGalley, and specifically I had my book on NetGalley for 3 months. And I did it through a co-op, so it was actually cheaper. I've had my book on NetGalley in the past, and I did it like through NetGalley, which meant I had to pay a lot more. But when you do it through a co-op, it's a lot cheaper because someone else has the NetGalley account, and it's kind of like you're renting out a slot on their account. I have a separate video on NetGalley that I will link down below where I share my thoughts, and I am having a totally different experience this second time around. I might have to do another video on NetGalley to share my second experience, because my second experience has been way more positive than my first experience, but even my first experience wasn't too bad. But anyways, I have a separate video on NetGalley. You can watch that if you'd like. But for the 3 months that my book was on NetGalley, I paid $125. And then, speaking of NetGalley, I also chose to do a NetGalley Spotlight, which basically means that for 1 week, my book was featured on the category page in this Spotlight section, basically just to get more eyes on it. Now, this is something I did the first time I had my book on NetGalley, and to me, it felt like that was the only reason why people saw and requested to read my book. And so that's why I did it again this second time around. But to be totally honest, at the time of filming this video, my book hasn't even reached the spotlight date, and I've already had so many people request it. I don't know if it's the genre or the co-op, and because my book is through a co-op, that people know about it more somehow. I don't know, but either way, I've had so many more people requesting the book. I'll have to go back and really compare the stats to see what a difference it was. And maybe if I do another video on NetGalley, I'll do that, and I'll kind of compare the stats of my first experience with NetGalley to my second experience with NetGalley. But either way, I paid for a spotlight. At the time of filming this video, that time for the spotlight hasn't been reached, so I can't say whether or not it was worth the extra money, because the spotlight was $267.25 to have my book be on the spotlight, and that is to, one, pay the ad fee, because essentially it's an ad. I'm getting my book featured on a category page on NetGalley, but also I had to slightly extend my time on NetGalley because the time I actually wanted wasn't available, and I had to choose a different time, so that was slightly inconvenient. But that is everything I paid for to create this book and do a little bit of marketing as well. And hopefully with NetGalley, we'll see when release day comes that some of those NetGalley reviews translate to reviews on Amazon as well. So let's talk about the total that I spent, because with all the expenses that we talked about today, I spent $2,907.25, which is not too bad. But when you add that with what I also spent just on the Kickstarter, I've spent almost $6,000 in producing and marketing this book. Obviously, because of the Kickstarter, we already had some profit come in, which is nice, but that's a big number. So I am doing another video later on whether or not I think doing the Kickstarter was worth it. And I know if you haven't watched my Kickstarter video yet, this might seem out of context, but truly, I think we're gonna take things full circle. We're gonna talk about whether or not spending that much money on a Kickstarter is worth it. And then also, I think I'm gonna have to do another video on whether or not doing NetGalley again and NetGalley with a category spotlight is worth it. So we will just have to wait and see. So make sure you stay tuned for those videos. And also, please, please, please make sure to go ahead and purchase your copy of Sparks in Iceland. And if release day has come, make sure to also leave your review of Sparks in Iceland on Amazon and share it on social media. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.